going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about one little bit of information that is shaping your passing game and your capabilities within both College Football 25 and Madden 25 that you may or may not be aware of, that is probably the most impactful individual rating attribute, whatever you want to call it, as far as your passing game is concerned within these games. And that one bit of information, that one rating, attribute, whatever you want to call it, is going to be a quarterback's throwing style or throwing animation, which is a modification that you can do to a quarterback if you really wanted to within both of those games. And it is by far and away the most important attribute for a quarterback within College Football 25 or Madden 25. And it's going to make a massive difference in your gameplay if you haven't already been aware of it. In order to access it in either of those games, you're simply going to go to your roster and click on that player and edit that player. Within College Football 25, there's a little bit of an asterisk here because you cannot edit anything on an existing player on the roster. If it's a player that has been recruited to your team, you can modify these things if your settings allow it. But as far as an existing player, you're not going to be able to change it. Now, I'm also not saying that you should go out here and change your throwing style or your throwing animation on all your players in all your leagues. You're going to have to check and make sure that that is legal within your leagues that you are doing. This can be considered cheating or cheese within your leagues, so make sure that you guys actually get the appropriate approval before you ever do anything like this in a connected dynasty or something like that. So I did want to put that qualification in there first. So if you can see, if I bring up my senior quarterback, I press on his player card and then I go into edit the player, I'll be able to see everything and gain the necessary information that I need in order to make a decision on this player. And that is that he has over the top 2 as a throwing style, which is a really solid throwing style. We'll get into a little bit more of which ones are good, which ones aren't good, later on. But first I wanted to then take a look at my freshman quarterback, edit player, and you guys will be able to see that I actually have the capability, based on the settings within this dynasty, to be able to modify this throwing style. And as we scroll through the different throwing styles, you'll be able to see some of the differences in speed. As you can see, just right off the bat, over the top 1, relatively slow as compared to over the top 3. And that is really the main difference here. There are some other subtle differences that are worth being aware of, and that is that a deep ball animation is going to take a while longer than their normal windup that you see here on the screen. And there's no clear way other than going in with those different throwing animations and testing them to see which ones are faster or slower just right off the rip. You can, however, go into your styles and compare their base throwing animation here and get a good gauge for which ones are going to be quicker or slower. Another really important point here is going to be the release point. For these over-the-top ones, they're going to be really good for throwing out of pressure and those types of things because the ball is going to be released away from the defensive players that are in your face, whereas you might have something like a lower 3/4 animation, which is more of a sidearm animation, which can result in a different trajectory, can result in a lot of passes being batted down or hitting into offensive and defensive linemen simply because of the lower release point of the football. So let's talk about the most important information here. Which ones are the fastest, which ones are the slowest, and which ones aren't? Because that's going to dictate your decisions on who you should start, who you should develop, who you should commit to as a quarterback within College Football 25 Dynasty mode and even within Madden. So the fastest throwing animations are going to be over the top 2, over the top 3, 3/4 3, and 3/4 4, and then lower 3/4 2. One of the qualifications here that we've already talked about is the deep ball potentially being different with these animations. And 3/4 2 is one of those ones that has that qualification because it is a pretty quick throwing animation, but for a deep ball, it has quite a bit of a wind up. So it does extend that throwing animation, and you're going to not get as many footballs off as you would with some of the other animations. My personal favorite out of all of these is over the top 2. This one seems to be the most consistent for being able to throw out of pressure, and it will make a massive difference in your gameplay within College Football 25 or Madden 25. Some really low overall quarterbacks can perform really, really well by simply having over the top 2 or over the top 3 or some of these faster throwing animations, because it's going to allow you to get the ball off before that pressure gets there or in the midst of that pressure getting into your face. And I think that is truly the most important thing about throwing the football within both College Football 25 and Madden 25 is that the pressure can get in there so quick that you need to be able to get the ball off with pressure in your face. You need to be able to get the ball off quick, and with some of those other throwing animations, you are putting yourself at a severe disadvantage. And so then let's talk about some of the slowest throwing animations within the game, which we'll start off with over the top 4. If you get a player that has over the top 4 and you're not changing the throwing style, or you're not able to change the throwing style, then you're going to be in a bad spot. You definitely do not want to have a player that has over the top 4. It's one of the slowest ones within both of those games. And then the other ones that are notably really slow are 3/4 2. Still not quite as slow in my opinion as the previous one, but then we also have 3/4 5, which is a notably fairly slow throwing animation. And so if you have any of those three, the slowest ones, you definitely want to look at other quarterback options or other throwing animation options if that is available to you. But it's really important for you to know this information whenever you're making decisions at the quarterback position, because it really does impact your capabilities within these games. Now, within Madden, there are some abilities that can speed up your throwing animation, especially when under pressure and those types of things. So that can be really useful, especially if you get a quarterback that might have a longer throwing animation. In key situations, it can slow it down, so you can use that to work with it. But some of those abilities are not available within College Football 25, and so it's even more important, in my opinion, in College Football 25 to ensure that you get a quarterback that has a good throwing animation. And dare I say, it might even be more important to start a quarterback that has a better throwing animation over a quarterback that has less skill caps or a better development trait. It really truly does not matter if you have a star or elite quarterback if they have one of the slowest throwing styles in the game, and there's nothing you can change about that. The amount of pressure that you'll receive, the amount of incomplete passes that are forced by that pressure, the inability to throw out of pressure and throw out of sacks is really, really detrimental to your capabilities on offense within those games. And that's another big factor as to why in this College Football 25 Dynasty with Akron, where we've challenged ourselves to recruit only 3 stars, I've been pretty high on this quarterback specifically coming in as a freshman and want to develop him up because he has a pretty solid throwing animation. He's over the top 3 as his base throwing animation, which is one of my favorites. So Randy Westbrook is going to be getting heavy consideration, and I'm certainly going to go in and try out some of the other quarterbacks that are available to me, but they're all going to come in with different throwing animations, and it causes you to have to work differently with those types of quarterbacks. As we can see here, this quarterback has 3/4 2, even though he has a better dev, but you can already see how much slower that throwing animation is, and that's going to cause some complications with me working with that quarterback, and probably going to cause me to not want to play with that player as much as the other ones that have simply a fast release and can get the ball to where I need them to get it to. So let me know down in the comments section, were you guys aware of how much the throwing style or throwing animation impacts your gameplay within College Football 25 or Madden 25? I've actually said this for years and years and years within football games, that this is probably the most important thing about your quarterbacks within the game. So I'd be curious to hear where you guys currently stand on it. Do you focus on it? I know that a lot of people that I play with often overlook the throwing style on quarterbacks. It's really easy, especially in College Football 25, in my opinion, to kind of get fooled into starting a player that might not necessarily be to your benefit, because you can get some really cool looking quarterbacks with like 90 plus speed or really high throw power or different ratings. But in addition to players coming in as, you know, kind of specialized or unbalanced players as far as their capabilities are concerned, they also come in with throwing styles that could be really detrimental to your passing game, and it could be the answer to why you have some issues with getting the ball off and your passing game within College Football 25. So please let me know that information down in the comment section below. Let me know what your thoughts are on throwing animations, throwing styles, and I'd be also curious to hear, do your leagues allow you to modify those things? I'm actually in one league that doesn't care at all. They would allow me to modify my throwing style, but I'm in a lot of realistic leagues that would be taboo, and you would never be allowed to do that because that would technically be cheating. So like I said, let me know that information. Please leave your feedback down below by leaving a like, leaving a comment as I mentioned, and subscribing if you're new around here. And as always, I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.